So yeah, we're talking about service today, and our first speaker has quite the servant heart and a very good work ethic, and also quite a bit of energy at Vacation Bible School in particular. I think she's the best dancer at Vacation Bible School, but she tells me the coffee has not kicked in yet, so you might not be able to get a few moves out of her yet this morning. But our first speaker is Tori. Come on forward, please.
Hi guys. So first of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Tori Allen, if you don't know me already. I'm in the youth group, and I went on the soccer clinic trip thing that we did this year. So I would like to begin with a verse first. So Galatians 5:13. You, my brothers, were called to be free, but do not use your freedom to indulge the sinful nature. Rather, serve one another in love. So my partial week helping at the clinic was pretty rough. I was really sick the whole time, which is the reason I ended up going home so early. But it was also really, really hot, and I'm not exactly the biggest fan of soccer. However, the pain and the dislike of soccer helped me to be able to look a lot deeper in myself to really see the reason why I wanted to help and serve the community. The people of the community needed our love and willingness to serve, and because it was challenging, it made me serve deeper. To serve in love is very important, but to love boldly is even more important. To do both is ideal. I may have been unable to finish out the week, but what I was able to do pushed me to love and serve boldly, just like we're told to do. During the week, we not only helped out at the soccer clinic, but we did other service activities each night. My favorite being Night Strike. Night Strike continuing with serving deeper as well as loving deeper. Night Strike is a huge push for that. For those of you who don't know what Night Strike is, it's under the Burnside Bridge every Thursday night, and it helps serve homeless people food and other things that they might need. And you're able to also talk to the homeless people that are around there. This is one of my favorite events to participate in because your perspective is always changed every time you go. Many of the homeless people that are under the Burnside Bridge aren't what you would typically think. A lot of them have jobs and families, but they're just unable to own a home or get enough food that they need. My group did the walk around, so we walked around Portland with supplies to hand out to different homeless people that were unable to make it under the bridge. On our walk, we met a couple that was homeless. They both had jobs, but still were unable to afford a house and enough food to feed them. It's really heartbreaking that people are unable to own a home, even with both full-time jobs. Going to Night Strike always opens my heart to want to further serve and do so in the name of the Lord. He has called us to serve with all of our hearts and to, through the pain, be able to serve through Him. My week was pretty tough, but it helped me to be able to serve with a full heart. Thank you.
Together coaching a team throughout the week. And last Sunday night, throughout the summer, we've had the kids, as we've gone from house to house doing our youth group activities, we've had the kids have the opportunity to lead devotions. And she shared a little bit about being a servant, and I thought it would be very appropriate for her to share that with you this morning. So come on forward.
Can you guys hear me? Yeah? Okay. My name is Jaylynn, for those of you who don't know me. And I just recently went on the soccer camp trip this summer too. So, in Revelations 2:19, it says, I know your deeds, your love and faith, your service and perseverance, and that you are now doing more than at first. This verse means a lot to me. When I read this verse, I thought to myself that God really does know when you're putting your heart and soul into service. I know that God understands the times when I do want to serve and when I'm being forced to. He knows when times are tough and you don't feel like helping people. When I went on a mission trip to Romania, I worked with children who were living in orphanages, and I noticed how challenging it was for me. It was difficult for me because the children would insult me and be rude to other kids. My first thought when I saw this was that these kids are annoying, and I don't feel like helping them. Although once I took a step back, I realized that their lives are not easy, and I had to tell myself to stop being so selfish and help them regardless of the fact that they were not nice to anyone. Once I realized that, it opened my heart, and I was able to serve them from my soul. I feel like God worked in me and shone his light through me. In the beginning of the summer, I went and volunteered at the soccer camp in Gresham. I was hesitant at first because I don't know anything about soccer. Throughout the week, though, I became more comfortable with teaching the kids and focused more on having fun. To be honest, there were mornings when I wanted to stay in bed. All of us counselors were staying in a high school gym, and it happened to be one of the hottest weeks in the whole summer. And air conditioning was not one of our luxuries. To add to that, there were about 50 of us in that gym, all hot and sweaty after a day's worth of work. I can surely say that there were mornings where I didn't want to get out of bed. In fact, I didn't get out of bed until about 10 minutes before it was time for breakfast. However, even though I was hot and tired and cranky, I got up and put a smile on my face and said, these kids need to know Jesus, and I am the gateway to that love. In those moments, God has taught me that there are going to be times when you don't want to serve other people because of your own life. Jesus reminds me that dying on a cross is the biggest act of love and service anyone has ever done. He served and saved us all from dying because of our sins. Remembering this helps me get up in the mornings. But I don't want to serve people based on how they are consuming that love or attention. It shouldn't define me serving them or not. I myself am not worthy of being served because I am human, and I don't deserve it. I need to serve people with love because Jesus did it for me without complaining, and his perseverance saved us all. Soccer camp was a great experience, and it was awesome to be reminded that there are people in this world that don't know who Jesus is, and I got to serve the kids and show them love. The service trip to Romania taught me to be grateful that I was adopted, and I am loved so I can love others now and give all I am to them. Whether it's teaching swimming, soccer, or just being with the kids, I know to serve from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you, Jaylynn. Before I get into this, I was reminded while we were at the soccer camp, there was only the youth kind of put together a band, and they played one song the entire week. It was only one song for hours on end, if I remember correctly. And I didn't talk with Carrie about this before, but it was Oceans. And it's just very bizarre that was one of the songs for today. I thought that was kind of a cool God thing, for sure. Because it definitely reminds me of the trip now, because I can't really think of anything else when I hear that. So our Old Testament reading today shares Joshua's final words to the people. He has fought with them in many battles to take over the Promised Land. He says his most famous words, "As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Not I will serve the Lord, but my household, my family will serve the Lord." So too our slogan here at Bethlehem is not where Jesus meets me, but where Jesus meets his family. And God could just meet us individually, and he does. But that alone is not his desire. People often say things like, I don't need to go to church to believe. I can worship God on the mountains and in the lakes, wherever I am. Well, that's true. But without accountability and fellow believers cheering you on, it's pretty easy to just start worshiping the mountains or the lakes instead of the maker of the mountains and the lakes. More importantly, God's desire is that we would be with others who also believe. His desire is that through us, he might lead others to know him as well. And sometimes believers can't be found within our own biological family. Joshua mentions this, that his own forefathers clung to idols and not the true God. For those who do not come from a family of believers, God gives us a church family that does believe. God's desire is that we not be alone. In fact, the first thing that God says was not good when making all of creation was man being alone. God designed us to be together, in relationship with others. So our theme today is not just serving, but serving together. And as a youth group, perhaps you could call us a youth family at this point. We accomplished quite a task, not taking over the promised land or fighting any wars with Joshua, but helping to run a soccer camp for 450 kids. And I can assure you, if any of us tried to do that on our own, we would have failed miserably. The high schoolers like to serve with one another, and they've done it quite regularly, as Tori kind of mentioned. But I've heard some groanings amongst the group about not wanting to serve with other churches or with others outside of our group. I'm happy to say that though I've heard the kids say this, they haven't acted this way in a long time. And they certainly did not act like this on our trip to the scary other side of town known as Gresham. In fact, I saw the opposite. I saw them making new friends and inviting them into our group. For years, we've kind of had a circle time where we gather up the wagons, everybody sits down in a circle, and we talk about how our day went. And this was the first time that it wasn't just our group. They would invite some of their friends to join us. And it was unprompted, and it worked out pretty well. We especially made some friends from the youth group over at Trinity in Oregon City. It was actually college kids that were mostly part of their group. And not only that, it turned out that they were the niece and nephew of Jan Brown, who attends here. So sometimes you really are part of the family of God. It's amazing how that works in the Lutheran world. And we do the same thing here through our work with Love Inc., where we've connected up with about half a dozen other churches and with government agencies so that if there is a family in need, we can direct them to just about everything they could possibly need. By serving together instead of alone, we get a lot more done. As it says in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 9, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return for their work. Yet we still often think that we're alone in serving God. And on our trip this summer, we assumed the kids were there for the soccer, and then we're just going to kind of make them sit through a little bit of something about Jesus each day. But the truth was far from that. Many of the kids actually preferred the Jesus time, or the Lamb's lesson, for about 20 minutes of going through the Bible over soccer. And this could have been because the kids' stock was in the shade, and it was an escape from playing a sport that really their parents only wanted them to play. But it was also true that when you talk to these kids about their faith, they had a whole lot to say. One of the youth who was coaching asked their team to share what they learned about Jesus and what they liked about him. And most every kid said something. One 5-year-old perked up and said, "Jesus is God, and he loves me more than anything else no matter what I do." And as this girl said this, I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm the one being served right now. I've often found that to be true. That when I've stepped up to share about Jesus, I expect to get a negative response of, "What? Why are you talking about that?" But more times than not, I get an, "Oh, I'm a Christian too." And in the last few months, you might have heard a survey from the Pew Research that talked about how Christianity is on the decline. And what gets lost in that discussion is that in the same study, it also said that 70% of Americans claim to be Christians. And if you can get 70% of our country to agree on anything, that's pretty phenomenal. Satan is the one who wants you to think that you're alone, that your faith is just between you and God. Nobody believes this stuff. Keep your faith to yourself. Those are lies. The truth is we're not alone in our faith at all. The soccer camp and even our vacation Bible school here is filled with stories of families who encourage their kids to be brought up in the faith. So maybe our primary responsibility in America isn't to change atheists into believers, but to encourage those who are Christians in name only to dig deeper in their faith so that they might know the greatness of knowing Christ. We had a similar experience in being served in an unexpected place while on a scavenger hunt to find items for Night Strike, a homeless ministry in downtown Portland that meets every Thursday night underneath the Burnside Bridge. And if you haven't been, you should check it out sometime. I know I preach it a lot, but 7 o'clock every Thursday. It's a great thing to do. But we went to go get supplies for that ministry. And so we went to, we thought, well, where should we go for gathering blankets and food and things like that for homeless? Where should we go? Well, we went and found the richest neighborhood that we could find. And we went from door to door, and as we did that, we noticed a lot of no soliciting signs. And so we had that ethical question of, are we soliciting? Are we not? I don't know. So most of the time we skipped. And then we spent like a half hour there. We had an hour to do this. We didn't get a whole lot of stuff. But we did get some. And so then we had about 10 minutes left, and we were across from the church. And we thought, well, let's head over to, this is a low-income housing area that's part of a rehab center. And so the kids went into an apartment complex, and they knocked on doors, and we got quite a bit. And in fact, the best story from the night was from a family that said, just 2 months ago, we were also under the Bernhardt Bridge. And we really want to give back. In fact, here's our phone number. Give us a call and let us know how else we can serve you guys. And again, who was the servant there? I don't think it was us. And I did some research online and found that that isn't just true of our scavenger hunt, it's true of our nation as well. Our top 20% of earners give away about 1.5% of their income, while the bottom 20% of earners give to charity about 3.2% of their income. So it's over twice as much. So neither of these numbers is quite close to a full tithe, but it seems in America, the less you have, the more you're willing to give. It's funny how the least of these often gives the most. So over the week, the kids, as they mentioned, they served in hot gyms. It was 90 degrees the whole week. The soccer camp was very disorganized. I'll freely admit that. There was no sign-in or sign-out sheets for things. There was limited training in how to handle, let's say you have 30 kids on your team and they're all 3 years old and half of them don't want to play soccer. How do you handle that situation? We didn't really come up with a good, prayer and duck, duck, goose. Those were the what we kind of came up with. But surprisingly, during the week itself, I didn't hear that much complaining. Now, when I take kids to amusement parks or water sliding or rafting, I've heard lots of complaints of, do I have to? I don't want to. I'm afraid of heights. That sounds scary. Or I can't swim. Okay, actually, the last one, that's legitimate if you can't swim. I understand that one. But still, why is it that I hear more complaining and more drama when we're doing something fun than when we're serving others? And you could say, well, maybe it's the kids just really like soccer. Clearly, from what you've already heard, that was definitely not the case. But I think it could be that we're the ones, we've kind of realized that we're the ones being served by the experience. But I also think it's because it's what God has made us to do. He's written on our hearts the command to do two things: to love God and love your neighbor. In a week-long service project, your entire focus is on loving God, loving your neighbor, and doing that with some friends. What could be better than that? And why would you complain about it? So then the challenge at the end of these trips is always, how do we make the rest of life like a service project? How do I make my life one of service? I've found it in my work at the church, but maybe you found it in your work as a parent or a grandparent or a godparent. It's interesting that God puts parents together into teams called families to work together. Or it could be in your work as a landscaper or as an engineer, knowing how your work will bless the lives of others. And if you don't have an answer to that question as to where you could serve God with others, know that we have an entire church filled with possibilities for you. From teaching Sunday school to singing with joyful singers to being a trustee. If you have a way to serve, we can certainly put you to work with some other folks. Or maybe it's something simpler, like Jaylynn pointed out. Serving isn't as much about what you're actually doing, it's about the intent of what you're doing. So serving God can be as simple as giving somebody eye contact and asking how your day's going, or smiling at a baby in the pew in front of you, or telling the waiter that they didn't bill you for your drink. These aren't difficult things, but it does take some thought. The time and effort it takes is worth it, because God shows up when you go out of your comfort zone a little bit and serve Him. God got out of His comfort zone to serve you. Matthew chapter 20, verse 28 tells us that the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give His life as a ransom for many. The night before Jesus gave His life for us, He got down on His hands and knees and washed His disciples' feet. We watched the pastor, who's kind of looking over the soccer camp, wash a servant's feet one morning during the camp. And then every Thursday night at night strike underneath the Bernhardt Bridge, the homeless there have the opportunity to have their feet washed as well. And a couple of years ago, on a trip to Montana, the high schoolers had the opportunity on another service project to have their feet washed too. There's reasons for this tradition. It's something only a caring servant would do. Only someone who is willing to get on the floor on their hands and knees for you. We have a God who loves and cares for you that much. He's willing to wash you clean in places that you might not even want to think about. And we know this. Yet so many out there don't know this. Or they just don't understand that love that God has for them. But they could. Through God working through your hands and your feet as we serve together. Because God has showed us His great love for us through the washing of the feet and Jesus' death on the cross. He boldly say with Joshua, "As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." The peace of God, which passes all human understanding, guard and keep your hearts and minds in our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.